From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Hi everybody, welcome back for another episode. This episode focuses on the house behind me. It's my house, but it was built for and originally owned by Bayview's only female shipowner, Johanna Brotch. There were 75 female shipowners in Milwaukee history. Only one of them lived in Bayview, and that's Johanna Brotch. Her husband, John Brotch, captained the ships that she owned while she lived here. She owned 2 of them, and you'll learn about that in the upcoming episode. It's not a happy ending. However, I think that she's worth remembering, don't you? So let's give it a shot here. So this is a very unique house, very historical house. It's one of many lake captains' homes that lived in Ship Captain's Row, which is East Lincoln Avenue, right on this street, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, from 1878 to 1968. They have a great heritage, and I'm proud to tell you who Johanna Brotch was and what she did. The marker that you see in front of the house is the first time that any female shipowner, female entrepreneur, which she was, she ran the business operations of the schooners while her husband sailed them, and also the first time that any lake captain has been honored with a marker at their house in the entire state of Wisconsin. So this is a Very important historical discovery. First time in Bayview that this has ever happened. This is the first historic marker to be placed in front of here in 26 years. And it's the only one to be placed in front of a residence. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. And don't forget, hats off to our Bayview Lake Captains. See you next time.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview, to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Johanna Brotch, who was Bayview's first one and only female shipowner. She owned 2 schooners while living in Bayview, the Sassacus and the Arctic, both captained by her husband, John Brotch, and financed by her older brother, William Draves. It's likely while husband John handled the ship, Johanna ran the business side of it, securing supplies, paying bills, and other necessary and important administrative details. Together they had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls: William, John Jr., Eddie, Jenny, Carrie, and Leonie, who went by Sadie. Johanna herself took the nickname Jenny very soon after moving to Bayview in the early 1880s. Johanna Brotch is covered in much greater detail in the 550-page companion book to this series, titled A Brother Helps His Sister, The True Story of William A. Draves, the Schooner Arctic, and the House at 515 East Lincoln Avenue. She will also be honoured with a historic marker from the Wisconsin Historical Society at her house at 515 East Lincoln Avenue this year, 2024. Important details about this marker will be provided at the end of this episode. Johanna Brotch was born in 1857 in Weistock, Prussia. She had 3 siblings, Wilhelm, Augusta, and Charles. They all immigrated with their parents from Stettin, Prussia, to the USA and Milwaukee in June 1869. Their Atlantic crossing in steerage class on the Prussian sailing ship Louise took an astonishing 44 days to reach their destination of Quebec City, Canada. Believe it or not, this sailing duration was the norm for the time. After arriving in Canada, they then travelled on to their immigration site into the USA at Detroit, Michigan. From there, they made their way to Milwaukee. Quebec City to Detroit was chosen instead of New York because Detroit was less crowded, crime against immigrants was much lower, and perhaps most importantly, the likelihood of acceptance into the US was much greater. After living with the family in various locations on Milwaukee's west side, Johanna married a sailor named John Brotch on 21st of August, 1877, in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, at age 20, where she may have been working, and where his ship was likely home-ported. Born in 1855 in Wisconsin, of German and possibly Prussian immigrant parents, John Brotch's days before marrying Johanna are unknown. She and John then moved to Bayview 2 years later in 1879, where they lived on Smith Street, 1879 to 81, and also bought Lot 26 on East Lincoln Avenue with the intention of building a house there, and where eventually Johanna's final home of 515 East Lincoln Avenue would stand. Johanna and John then moved to 27, 1882, and 26 Lincoln Avenue, 1883 to 84. During this time, John Brotch became owner and captain of the schooner Elbe, of which he had been crewman for several years previously. The Elbe is the first schooner John Brotch captained while living in Bayview. In November 1883, the Elbe had to be abandoned after several accidents made the costs of repairs uneconomical. After this, John Brotch is believed to have taken a year off from sailing, 1884, to build the first house on the northeast corner of Lot 26 on Lincoln Avenue. After construction was complete in late 1884, he and Johanna and their young family moved in, receiving the house number of 517 Lincoln Avenue, though this house is no longer standing. From 1885 to 87, John Brotch took non-sailing jobs ashore. Then, on 21st March 1888, a neighbour and lumber-yard owner, Charles H. Ellis, who owned several ships, offered Johanna her first schooner ownership opportunity. It was likely a quid pro quo, where Ellis, who would remain as co-owner, would contract the captain job out to John Brotch, but this is not documented, in exchange for Johanna's cash influx, which would be used to strengthen the main deck to carry more lumber for Ellis's yard. The schooner's name was the Sassacus. This is the first ship, there are two, that made Johanna Bayview's first, one and only female shipowner. It is also likely this is the second schooner John Brotch captained while living in Bayview. This arrangement lasted all of 1888. Then Ellis, as majority owner, sold the Sassacus in early 1889, putting John Brotch out of a job. Johanna lived on at 517 East Lincoln Avenue in Bayview for 2.5 months after becoming part owner of the Sassacus, from 21st March to 31st May 1888, before moving for a year out to Wauwatosa, while her wealthy brother and Bayview's greatest rags-to-riches story, William A. Draves, built for her the new house on the same lot, though farther back, the house that exists today at 515 East Lincoln Avenue. The next year, on 17th January 1890, John Brotch purchased the schooner Arctic. This is the second schooner he owned, the first being the Elbe. However, this took all of his and Johanna's money, so much so that he had no money left to pay the crew, telling a reporter in January 1890 that he planned on sailing it himself. This proved impractical, so Johanna's wealthy brother William stepped in to provide the capital for the crew, but transferring ownership away from John Brotch to William's brother Charles, a labourer at an iron factory, as part of the deal. Amazingly, Charles signed as the new owner of the Arctic on the same day, 24th April 1890, that he became a U.S. citizen, since citizenship was required for ship ownership. John Brotch is listed as captain on the Arctic's sail paperwork, thus making it the third schooner he captained, making him Bayview's most prolific schooner captain. At the exact same time, the first floor of the new house at 515 East Lincoln Avenue was completed by her brother William, and then Johanna, John Brotch, and their children all moved in. April 1890 had been an extremely significant month for Johanna. When it concluded, she and John Brotch not only had a new home, they also had another schooner. 3 years later, on 22nd of April 1893, Brother Charles, acting on behalf of the, quote, financier, unquote, his brother William, sold the Arctic to their sister Johanna Brotch for $1, making this the second ship that qualifies her as Bayview's first, one and only female shipowner. John Brotch remained as captain, and together they operated the Arctic successfully as an entrepreneurial team, Johanna handling the books and details ashore, John captaining it over all but one, Lake Ontario, of the Great Lakes. On 18th May 1894, the Arctic was substantially damaged in a storm on Lake Huron, losing its rudder, and was so badly damaged that it had to be sold about 10 days later. John Brotch took a crewing job out of Milwaukee to finish out that sailing season, going on in subsequent years to captain 2 more ships, name or names unknown, while living at 515 East Lincoln Avenue from 1896 to 97, and from at least 4th of June to 28th September 1900. This increases his total to 4 and possibly 5 different schooners captained while living in Bayview, 2 and possibly 3 while he lived at 515 East Lincoln Avenue, further cementing him as Bayview's most prolific schooner captain by 3 schooners over the closest contender with 2. The likely candidate for the aforementioned unknown ship or ships is the schooner Narragansett, which was owned by Bayview neighbour and fellow lake captain John Leask. John Brotch was likely contracted by Leask to captain the Narragansett during the 2 different periods above, and ultimately lost his life aboard as captain when it sank in a storm in mid-September 1900 off the Canadian coast on Coburn Island in northern Lake Huron. His body was never recovered. After husband John Brotch's death, Johanna continued living in the house at 515 East Lincoln Avenue as homeowner for the rest of her life. A second floor was added in 1902, most certainly paid for by her brother William, who hired one of Milwaukee's most famous architects, Charles L. Lesser, to design it. 4 years later, in 1906, she built a rental cottage in the back of Lot 26, with money her brother William Draves left her when he died that same year. In the years that followed, she lost 3 of her 6 children to tuberculosis, Eddie, John Jr., and her youngest, Leonie, and another, Jenny, to a blood clot after a hospital operation. Her mother, Caroline, who moved in with Johanna at 515 East Lincoln Avenue after son William died in 1906, is also believed to have died from tuberculosis in 1917. Between 1900 and 1918, Johanna lost her husband John, 5 of her 6 children, her mother, and her brother William and his wife Emily. Now living alone at 515 East Lincoln Avenue, Johanna became the matriarch of the Draves family, attending many Draves gatherings where she was front and centre in family photos. Johanna Brotch died on 19th December 1948, aged 92. She is buried with 5 of her 6 children at Forest Home Cemetery, just around the corner from her beloved big brother William Draves. We will close this discussion of Johanna Brotch with a very special announcement. During this year, 2024, a historic marker from the Wisconsin Historical Society will be placed at Johanna Brotch's home at 515 East Lincoln Avenue, marking only the 3rd time in 26 years that a marker from the State Historic Society has been erected in Bayview. Of perhaps even more significance, the marker is the only time in Wisconsin history that a home of either a female ship owner or a Great Lakes ship captain has ever been honoured and recognized with a historic marker from the Wisconsin Historical Society, and with Johanna Brotch and her husband John, both honours occur in one house. This is a historic, first in the state honour for Bayview, demonstrating its rich and substantial maritime history. Look for details on the channel regarding the date and time for the dedication ceremony for this very important historic marker honouring Johanna Brotch. In addition, if you would like to read the amazing story about the restoration of Johanna's house at 515 East Lincoln Avenue, that is described in great detail in the book A Brother Helps His Sister, the true story of William A. Draves, the schooner Arctic, and the house at 515 East Lincoln Avenue. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. Remember, if you'd like to read more about Johanna Brotch, Bayview's first and only female shipowner, please go to our website. In addition, this channel and its matching website also plan to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to donate to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider donating to us through the listings shown next. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. That is the only surviving intact ship once captained by at least 2 and likely 3 different Bayview lake captains. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.